Woodlands National Park by Buddy Films on YouTube. Don't you just love visiting national parks? Being out in nature, breathing in the fresh air, watching the wildlife, getting some exercise, and making memories. What could possibly go wrong? Well, according to the title, it's the most dangerous national park in the USA. I highly recommend that you go watch the videos first, link in the description. But if you're not sure, I hope my recap and thoughts on this series will convince you to give it a watch. It's worth it. Now, why is this park so dangerous? We'll get an answer to that by watching the 1975 found footage tapes. In the first tape, we get introduced to Park Ranger Steve and Alex. They're welcoming us to Woodlands National Park, but the video cuts out before we hear what state the park is located at. We soon get shown the park brochure. The information we get is about the park. Woodlands National Park was designed as a national monument in 1912 and made an official national park in 1939. The park contains many anomalous creatures, plants, and entities. So much for a relaxing vacation trip. We soon get shown information videos that are shared only in the park's visitor center. We'll get more insight on the park as we go. He's standing right there. Now, what can we expect in these information videos? Creatures such as walkers, the weather, trails and visitor locations, the history of the park, and more. Pardon me, walkers? Guess we'll find out later. In the end, the two rangers thanks us for watching the video and they hope that we have a good time at the park. I'm sure we will. Hopefully none of us get hurt. Or worse. Next video, and it opens with Ranger Steve talking about... Yeah, I heard that it's bad to say the name out loud, so I'm going to refer to them as Wendy. Look, I don't want that thing coming after me. It's a flesh-eating monster, bro! Anyways, they are Native American legends that turned out to be real after discovering mishaps connected to them at the Woodlands National Park. We get shown footage of a person who was assumed to be attacked by a Wendy, and their legs are missing. Yikes! The park hands out pamphlets to help educate guests, and with this we'll learn what to do when encountering a Wendy. Firstly, don't run. They're faster than you. Just slowly back away until you have a safe distance and speed walk your way to safety. Find a ranger and tell them about the sighting and they'll eventually close the area. While giving us this knowledge, Steve spotted something behind John, the cameraman, and groans could be heard. Steve eventually started to panic and the two ran. I thought you weren't supposed to run. Anyways, John didn't make it. He fell and the sounds of crunching and flesh could be heard. Oh, hi, friend. Now, according to the brochure, Wendy's can be killed if their hearts are removed. But do you really think you'll survive long enough to remove their hearts? Wendy's will tear you apart before you could even try. Third video, and with Ranger Alex. Before jumping straight to the video's topic, Alex states that the dead man's trails will be shut down. We then get shown footage of the Wendy attack, and Alex wishes for the guests to be respectful towards the victim. Now we get told a PSA, and it turns out there were multiple walker sightings. Finally, they teased this at the beginning, but now we get to know. So what are walkers? They're unique to the park, only found there. Walkers were once believed to be completely invisible, spectral even. Apparently, walkers are so dark it absorbs all spectrum of visible light, making them invisible to the naked eye. But with the help of special technology, walkers were able to be seen. Then we get shown this familiar sight, he's standing right there, before returning back to Alex explaining the thermal technology that shows us walkers. Walkers can be between 12 and 45 feet tall, with their legs being what's tall and the torsos being short. Spooky. Within the park brochure, we get even more information. For example, the information we just learned through Alex, and that walkers are capable of producing high levels of radio waves from their bodies. This causes radios in the area to produce static. It's theorized that this is the way walkers communicate with one another, but it seems their language can't be deciphered yet. We return back to Alex and he mentions that there's a designated camping area, which is what keeps the danger within the park away. If you want to avoid danger as much as you can, don't leave the designated camping area. It's walled off, watched by rangers, and properly lit. But even so, don't let your campfire go out. Keep everything lit. Which is surprising because we're in a heavily wooded area. When it's time to hit the hay, do they just have to keep the fire going? Sounds dangerous. Because, you know, forest fires. But based on what Alex is telling us, it sounds more dangerous putting it out. Additionally, when having a radio in hand, hearing static means you must respond with Ranger. If an actual ranger responds to you, you're good. If not, ignore it because it's just a walker. And that concludes this video. And we're moving on to the next. We get introduced to Dire Corporation, bringing you a better tomorrow. I don't have clearance to watch this. You don't have clearance to watch it. We're watching it anyways. We're rule breakers. Now John, the cameraman attacked by a Wendy, got brought up here. Dire Corporation got told by Woodlands National Park about John's death and the corporation sent in their military group, Task Force Delta, to deal with the Wendy. So that's who's capable of taking them out. Makes sense. They're most definitely far more prepared and trained compared to a regular visitor. During the mission, everything will be documented by a cameraman. We also get shown the map of the park, and we've already been told where the site of John's death is at. Alex mentioned that Dead Man's Trails was closed off, so it was easy to tell that that was the area. Besides being dangerous there, I'm guessing the other reason why the trail was closed was for the military group to do their job without being disturbed. Anyways, the group followed the trail that the Wendy left behind, and at some point they had to set camp for the night. Later on, they found an off-trail campsite, and because this is away from the Dead Man's Trails, anyone was free to camp there. Too bad the campers were far too close, and it seems they were attacked. A growl was soon heard, and everyone got into positions. Nightfall arrived, and it was time to hunt down Wendy. Yelling, shots fired, chaos. The cameraman stands back as the others move forward, but after hearing a noise nearby, they hid within the abandoned tent, which wasn't smart because they're now a city sitting duck and they were attacked. Luckily, the others rescued them on time. Hey, playing as bait worked. And that's the end of the video. Hunting down a Wendy can be quite the challenge. Next video, we get more information on what happened during the Wendy attack, specifically what happened on Steve's end of the encounter. While running, Steve radioed Alex telling him that John was getting eaten alive and how he needs help because it will come after him too. He kept running until he eventually found another ranger who assisted with driving the creature away by shooting at it. This is how Steve survived the encounter with the Wendy. After hearing their call, we switched to footage of Alex and Steve giving us updates on the park. They made a memorial service to John and thanked those who paid their respects. As Alex talks, Steve grew more and more uneasy, probably survival's guilt and being fed up with everything happening. Steve is depressed and stressed. He wants to stop filming and take a break, but Alex says that they have to continue. Apparently the death quota is too high and it's only halfway through the year. It's exhausting, but this is their job. And Alex mentioned that if they find out that their photographer John was killed, the park would be shut down. They? Who specifically is they? Diet Corporation already knows because they're the ones who are taking down the Wendy, so it can't be them. Is it the government? Honestly, the government should have stepped in ages ago since the park is clearly dangerous to human life. Maybe I'm overthinking it and they could just be talking about park visitors or society in general. Because if it gets out that the park is dangerous, less people will visit and in turn make less profit. Honestly, I feel like the only good reason to keep the park open is because with all the staff and rangers, they seem to be doing a great job keeping all the creatures contained within the park. If it did close down, who's to say the monsters will want to explore outside of it? Though having the park open to guests is still a little strange, but whatever. Anyways, back to the video. Someone contacts Steve through the radio and John's wife wants a word about the incident involving her husband. Steve and Alex rushed over. The scene soon changes to a voice recording with a man and John's wife. They want her to sign an agreement to ensure her silence. She finds this all suspicious and it turns out she knows what's happening within the park. This is when we learn that John's death was being covered up and blamed on a bear attack, and that the park downplays the monsters within the park. I'm guessing this is how they go under the radar with the government and society, tampering with the numbers of deaths in the park and making the monsters out to be just something fascinating and a little spooky. By covering these things up, the park won't get shut down. But still, if it's known that monsters are here, I feel like the government would have still gotten involved regardless if the incidents were downplayed or not. Whatever. John's wife, Nancy, knows all of this and doesn't like what the park is doing. Eventually, Steve barged in and demanded that the man leaves. Once the man left, Steve begged Nancy to sign the NDA. She has to do it, and Steve worries that people are listening in, which startles Nancy. Steve soon shushed Nancy, and I believe he started to write something down. Eventually, he asked Nancy to read what was written without speaking, and she seemed extremely surprised by what she read. She agreed, and Steve told her to take the money given to her from the incident and go as far away as she can with her children. She agreed again. Now, I believe the people in charge of the park silence those who know too much, so maybe Steve wrote that she would get killed if she didn't sign the papers. Steve probably knows of this shady practice because A, he works there, and B, he probably saw it happen before, and doesn't want Nancy to face the same fate. But who knows? Next video, and both Steve and Alex tell us about a new creature and the history of mining done at the park. Gold could be found in the park, but it's quite risky to obtain due to the creatures hidden within the caves. What are they called? Cave critters. Tall, gray, with 6 appendages that range from 10 to 12 feet, and they are super strong. So strong, in fact, that they can scale up rocks. They usually remain within the caves, but just because you're outside doesn't mean you're safe. If you're too close to the cave opening, you could get attacked. And after hearing strange noises coming from the cave opening, Steve and the cameraman ran away immediately. We soon get shown a photo taken by John before his death, which he captured one of the cave critters. I'll zoom in. They really can scale rocks. Imagine it jumping down like Spider-Man and proceeding to attack you. You'll be dead. Fatalities by the hands of cave critters hasn't happened since 1962. But can we really believe this? Could the numbers be covered up again? We return to Alex, which he explains that the cave critters don't reproduce normally. They have special saliva, and when biting someone, you can either die, turn into one, or be fine. But being fine is a low chance compared to the other two options. To know if you're turning into one, the symptoms are your skin changing colors, abnormal strength, and the urge to return to the caves. After gaining this piece of information, we return to Diet Corporation with footage that we obviously shouldn't have access to, but we're watching anyways. I'm a gamma level in my heart. Now, the footage we get shown is witnessing someone who I believe is infected by a cave critter bite, and we see them becoming extremely violent and even managing to break their restraints and injuring someone before getting shot. We then get shown a pamphlet that gives us more insight on the creature. They were discovered by miners during the Golden Rush, and learning their true origins is still a mystery that is difficult to discover, and researching them leads to fatalities. We return to Alex, and he believes that the cave critters release pheromones that draw those who are infected back to the caves, and when they arrive, the critters take them in, almost adopting them, until they eventually become one of them. One of us. One of us. The transformation takes up to 6 months to complete. To avoid cave critters, just stay away from the caves, and don't bother those who look infected. It's too late for them. Don't be a hero to someone who can be rescued because they're determined to enter the caves. If you see infected people, just report them to a ranger, and that's the end of the video. Next one, and back at it again with gamma level clearance stuff that I don't have. We learned that a man by the name Todd got bit by the cave because of his overwhelming curiosity to go near it. This is why the saying curiosity killed the cat is a thing. Todd bandaged himself after the attack, and he hid his injuries from rangers and returned to New York unaware of the consequences. He, of course, started showing symptoms and went to dire medical facilities. After getting tested, it came out positive that he had the cave critter's disease, which he's in the first stage of, and Ranger Steve was notified about this. We soon get shown the recording of Steve getting the message about Todd's situation, and Steve is panicking until they learn that the situation was getting handled. A team was sent to Todd's home, and Todd was living in his basement closet and covered all the light sources. I'm assuming it's to give the illusion of a cave, and it's also because he's sensitive to light now. We soon get footage within Todd's home, and Todd left blood around. Turns out blood can come out of the eyes and nose of those who are infected based on documents saved from 1961. We get shown the footage from before again, and I believe this was Todd's fate. 6 months later, 2 security guards were investigating an abandoned hospital, which ended with one getting attacked and the other witnessing his friend getting taken away by creatures that sound oddly familiar to cave critters. Corp sent in a team after learning of the incident, which was recorded, and we learn that 3 out of 10 in the team survived, but not unharmed because 2 were bitten. The footage was sadly destroyed because the cameraman was killed, but we do get still frames of the event. It's extremely dark, the only light is coming from the team's flashlights. In the end, they covered up the incident and took away the critter's body. That's the end of this video. And now we're moving on to the latest video of the series. It opens with Steve, but his filming was interrupted by Alex, who radioed him about a walker attack. A camper reported an attack that involved his friends and himself, and Steve headed out immediately. The 2 rangers met up with each other and started investigating. They could hear music, and after following the noise, they spotted the radio and the campsite of the group. However, the tent was gone, and we learned what happened a bit more through Alex. It turns out the kid covered in blood apparently was picked up high in the air and thrown until he slammed against a tree, which was 30 feet up in the air. The kid fell, and the impact of hitting the ground caused him to snap his leg. Alex soon pointed at something in the distance, and the 2 acted immediately. They found a limb. Alex radioed other rangers to assist with cleaning the mess before other visitors find it. They continued investigating and found more human remains in the tent that was now high up on a tree. There was also a camera at the bottom of the tree. Throughout the filming, the footage sometimes glitches and becomes staticky, so I couldn't help but suspect they were being stalked by a walker. But ignoring that for now, thanks to the discovered camera, we get footage of the actual incident. We see a group of friends ready to set camp even if it wasn't in a designated spot. The friend to filming was reluctant but agreed with his friends, and they started setting everything up. After chatting for a while, the radio started to make a staticky noise. And we know what this means! The ground was starting to shake and stomping noises could be heard. One of the friends stepped away from the campfire to investigate, and the static continues to roar. That friend was soon raised into the air and dragged away. The only thing left behind was their arm. The 2 remaining friends are rightfully scared, pulled out a gun, and agreed that they need to find a ranger. Sadly, because walkers are invisible, the 2 couldn't see it coming, and another friend was attacked, only leaving the one still filming left alone. He fired a flare to the sky to alert the rangers that he's in trouble, and hid in the tent, but the tent was picked up and he was thrown at a tree. And this was the latest video. But we also have YouTube shorts, so let's speedrun these. The first 4 are teasers to the videos we have already seen, but the 5th short is different. Ranger Steve is talking to a park guest, and the park guest is weirded out by the deers in the park. Obviously, it's referring to Wendy's, and Steve turns around to see one, which is unsettling to say the least. I don't like seeing a deer standing on 2 legs. And then after this short, we get the 6th one, which we get told about the trees that aren't actually trees. I'm guessing this is teasing us for a future video. Get excited. Now, just to recap everything, we have a 1975 found footage starring 2 rangers named Alex and Steve, whose purpose of making these tapes is to inform park guests of what to expect within the park and the dangers while hiking the trails. We learn about the creatures within the park and ways to avoid dangers, while learning more about the past incidents and the corporation connected to all of this. Now, because this is found footage and the date is pretty old, these tapes were lost at some point, right? They were obviously used because these tapes were used to update the guests, but because it's titled found footage, they had to be lost at some point. Something must have happened to these tapes. Is the park still operating, or was it shut down? Is Steve and Alex okay after all this time? Is Dire Corporation involved once again? Did they cover things up? And who is exactly the one who found the tapes? Look, I have so many dumb questions, and the only way to get answers is by watching. So if you want to know what happens next, go subscribe to them! Watching the videos was so entertaining, and these Let's Explore videos I make are just to bring attention to these projects. It's not meant to replace the experience, so please go watch them if you haven't already! Now I hope you have a good day, I better not catch you dying on me, and goodbye! Peace out!